Hello and welcome to Talking TSM, TGH's show, about TSM's LCS team. I'm Robert Haynes. I'm your host and your guide into the world of TSM. Let's hop right into it. No major announcements as always. Please jump on into our Discord. We are having a great time. We have a lot of great discussions there, even about the traditional sports world of football. You'll figure out which one is which. But also, Draft Buff League started last week, and I got updates for you all. So the Emperors started off 1-0. Aaron, the wonderful person who created this new logo, 0-1. Wings of Fury, 0-1. Kim, starting off 1-0, also known as Team Solo Int. Good old Matthew Highsmith, also now known as Low Smith, starting off 0-1. Mellery, also known as Benjamin, starting off 0-1. Trey Chains losing to me, 0-1. JSM, I don't know, 1-0. Cowboy Dude, Double Lifts Trophy Case, 1-0. And then I also started out 1-0. So, yay. Currently fourth in terms of points. Had a pretty good week. My team didn't play as well as I would have liked. Again, my team is Someday, Gilius, Humanoid, FBI, Kaiser, Johnson, and Rogue. And then my bench includes Hear It, who I just picked up. Last week it was Fake God and Palafox. I'm pretty happy with my lineup, but, some people just didn't really perform the way I thought they would. Someday was fine. Gilius had an awful first weekend, so hopefully that'll change. Humanoid also had an awful first weekend. Hopefully that will change. FBI had a solid weekend. No surprise there. Hopefully he'll do the same against C9. Kaiser, along with all of Mad Lions, had a bad starting weekend. I think that will get better. Johnson was solid. We'll take that. And then Rogue actually played pretty well. So, not too much to complain about there. Actually remembering I need to switch out my boy Johnson right now because he's not playing this week. So good thing I picked up Hear It. Man, oh man, look at that. While talking to you guys, thinking about it. Draft Buff is super fun. Not a sponsor of the show yet. Draft Buff friends, we have talked before. If you guys are interested in sponsoring the show, let me know. But, you guys should definitely try Draft Buff or any kind of fantasy League of Legends. It's always super fun, so I would definitely highly suggest it. Moving on into the more important stuff, the stuff that you guys actually care about. The C9 series. So I'm 50-50. I'm hopeful, but I'm also a little worried after watching the C9 series. We'll go through it game by game again, then I'll give my overall thoughts this time last. So, game 1 was a really solid draft. They executed it well. The bot lane still struggled, but that's okay. I liked the idea of all of it. I do think the Gragas pick was probably the linchpin. But weirdly enough, with Power of Evil on Lucian, he actually had his best game yet of 2021. Now, I don't know if that has more to say about the, Lucian versus TF matchup, which, heavily favors Lucian. But, either way, I was encouraged by this draft. It felt like they had answers to everything. I really loved the Galio pick, and lost, even while still, not doing well in lane, was still hitting, his snares pretty consistently overall. And so when I'm looking at this draft, I'm thinking, okay, TSM did what we had talked about. They came out with a plan. And they executed on it, which is important. This team has to be able to have a plan and execute on it, which people are like, oh, well, what does that even mean? Like, no, I mean, that's important, right? Because if TSM had come out the way they had the previous games and weeks, it would have been bad news. And, I guess I kind of forgot. We also played TL this past weekend. I kind of wanted to push that one out because that was just an awful game overall. They picked Nar again. The team just looked horrible, and they got their butts handed to them by a really strong Team Liquid team. And, that's okay. This is a preseason tournament. That's the thing I keep remembering and reminding myself. They are learning, and they're, hopefully getting better. But this after a bad TL loss, they come out the next day, and this first game against C9 looks good. They have objective control. They look like they are understanding what they need to do. I mean, they took Mountain Drake and Rift Herald in very quick succession on different sides of the map, and they did a really good job of having like a flow. Sometimes games of League of Legends are like a river, right? Like there's a flow to it, and when there's rocks or something in the middle, it's about either going up it or around it. And this team, for some reason, it feels like up until this game had been running into dams, and either they would overflow it by just being better than their opponents, like in Golden Guardians or CLG, or against 100 Thieves and TL. Up until the C9 series, they would just stop, and they couldn't do anything because they were just, frankly, beaten. And so when we look at the way that this team played with the double 80 carry comp, with the Gragas being the one creating the displacement / Huni, with the Sword Art Galio, also, I think that we can kind of see the way that this team wants to play. They want Spica to be aggressive. They want to allow him to pour out the damage. And they need Huni and Sword Art to create opportunities for the rest of the team. And so we see that in this first draft. They dominated this game. Both Rift Heralds, 5 Drakes, 2 Barons, 9 turrets to 3. And while the game was, a little close, because C9's a good team, and Sven was starting to get really scary, honestly, as well as Blabber, they kept Fudge in check. They actually, really did well against Vulcan. And most importantly, this whole series, truthfully, and it started in game 1, Perks was pretty useless. He was kind of just there. And I was watching it with a couple friends, and we just kept joking. We're like, all right, when's Perks going to turn on? He just never did. Now, one person who will remain nameless, but if they listen to this podcast, which I will make them do, I joke, but they tried to tell me that, Perks is overrated. I don't think so. I still think that he's just getting used to figuring out his role with the team. He had so much synergy with G2, they could do whatever the heck they wanted, and then they just win because they were just really good. So, he's figuring everything out. But we head into game 2. And the dam starts building up. For some reason, in game 2, TSM, they get red side. They don't have first pick. That's fine. And the draft goes like this. Fudge picks, first pick for Cloud9 is Kaisa. Then TSM pick Jin and Nidalee. Now, this is the same thing they had done before. I understand. But, TSM kept the same bans, by the way, through all 3 games. Pantheon, Talia, and Olaf. And, first 3 bans, I should say. Cloud9, through the first 2 games, were banning Camille and Renekton. They're trying to hit Huni, which makes no sense when you think about it. Sure, Hooney's okay, Camille. He can have good games. He doesn't really play Rennington, so maybe they saw something or heard about something in scrims. I don't really know. As a reminder, TSM missed a ban in Game 1, which can't really happen. That just shows the discord and dysfunction that this team is having at the drafting level, which we'll dive into a little bit deeper later. But in Game 2, they have the opportunity to pick the Gragas, which became kind of the battled for pick after Hooney played it very, very, very well in Game 1. And here's where I have my issue. TSM can very easily get Nidalee probably later in the draft, or even Jin later in the draft. I don't know if it's just that Lost really only felt comfortable on Jin this whole tournament. They kind of just relegated him to that. I know he can play other stuff, so I'm a little concerned about that. But they have the opportunity to pick Gragas here. And at a minimum, they could very easily, because Kai'Sa's already picked, so it's not like Jin's going to get picked. And I understand, they end up, if I remember correctly, they end up picking TF because they don't want it to get banned. But when you look at the opportunity here, TSM very easily, if Nidalee's like the pick that they really want Spica on, Spica really wants Nidalee because he's a solid, very solid Nidalee, probably one of the best in the LCS, potentially, top Nidalee players in the world. And right here, instead, I would have loved to see them go Nidalee Gragas. Or TF Gragas, if they really want TF that badly. Because they end up giving up Gragas over to Cloud9. And they end up picking a comp that just doesn't work well together. And the problem ends up starting, in the bot lane. They also could have picked Galio here. I don't mind them getting, last pick to Sword Art more often. That's fine. But, the more I look at this, right, and then TSM randomly, banned Jace as their fifth ban. They also banned Lucian, which is fine because, again, he's strong against TF. Maybe the Jace is stronger than the TF. I don't really know. I assume that they assumed that Gragas was going top lane at this point. But, it just doesn't really make sense to me, this draft, because they're leaving, Hooney and Sword Art kind of vulnerable here, and they're letting the Gragas just go through for free to Cloud9. If they're on red side, we know that if they're leaving the Kai'Sa open, Cloud9 is going to take that. That is already a known quantity at this point. So why give that up and allow them to have the Gragas? And lo and behold, Fudge starts to get his groove back. Hooney looks terrible on one of his best picks he's ever had in Gangplank. I believe it's his top play champion. So I don't understand why he struggled so much. It's not like he probably hasn't played into a Gragas before. So I was a little surprised to see that. Power of Evil also looked horrific on TF, which is a pretty strong power play in the LCS, at least pretty much in the world for the last, couple years, really. And I know that's not really his style, but I mean, he just looked uncomfortable. He didn't, TF's important for having good communication. And truthfully, TF lost twice. He went 0-2 in this series. Didn't even get picked in the third game. So, maybe TF is finally falling out of favor. Maybe it's just more that the teams aren't really, connecting yet on that level to where they just snap decision, they know where to go with him. But overall, game 2 was just bad. And, truthfully, They just fed Sven, and he just did his thing. Went 10-0-3. He looked really good. Vulcan looked really strong on Alistar. You know, Perks again looked meh. He even got a Kali. Meh. So you think, okay, after game 2, TSM are going to look better. You head into game 3, and even after a loss, for some unbelievable reason, TSM pick red side again. Now, I guess they really want last pick, which is fine. But more importantly, they don't learn, and they ban the same damn things. I told myself I wasn't going to cuss much in this one. I keep getting explicit on the on everything because, you know, I'll couple swear words. Sorry, but passionate, man. It's hard not to say anything. They ban Pantheon, Olaf, and Talia, which is fine. They are strong, and I know that Blabber would be very good on the Talia. But here's the biggest thing. For some reason, again, Cloud9 start with a Renekton ban. I guess they just think it's just too strong. You know, they don't want to face it. Excuse me. And they ban the Kai'Sa, which, in my opinion, what? Sven has just crapped all over TSM 2 games in a row, going a combined 16-2 and something. Can't remember exactly what. I'll have to check again. But, oh yeah, by the way, Sven died twice in this whole series, I'm pretty sure. Let me make sure that's correct. I don't want to give you guys. Yeah, so he goes 16-2 and 6 on Kai'Sa, and then doesn't die again in game 3, so you can see how this one's going, right? They ban the Kai'Sa, then they ban the Jax. And TSM have a chance here and the first thing I'm thinking is I'm like, oh, they want to get Fudge on his Camille, because his Camille's really strong. And TSM go, we're gonna stay with our strategy. We're gonna let Fudge have his most comfortable champion. He had a good game. His confidence is building. Cloud9 want to get him Camille. It's obvious at this point. And it's like, TSM, please, just ban the Camille. They don't. And the draft starts going badly. They pick Jhin again, first pick, which is fine because at this point, Kai'Sa's banned. Jhin is theoretically the next best pick. So that's fine. But then they go with the Graves. And I'm sitting here like, what? Why would you do that? And then Cloud9 goes, we're going to line this up perfectly. We're going to play Blabber's signature champion, Kindred. Then we're going to throw a Galio on top of it. And at that point, we are, maybe 4 minutes into the draft, maybe 5. Maybe even 2, I think, actually, now that I'm looking at it. And I'm like, holy shit, that Wombo combo. Camille ult into Galio ult into Kindred ult into TSM has no response to this because there's no way they're going to be able to, grind through the 3 of these champions. And then I'm like, okay, this draft starts getting better because then they pick the Gragas. And I'm like, all right, so you can knock stuff out of the ult. This is good. This is good. You can knock Camille out of her own ult. I like this. Then they go on, they ban Misfortune. Makes sense. Cloud9 takes out the Orianna. They get rid of the Maokai because they don't want to deal with Sword Art's Maokai, which is really good. Although I wish the TSM would have realized this and picked him Maokai. I think Spica would have been fine with, counter picking later in the game, but hey, what do I know? They ban Aphelios. Again, not a bad draft here in Game 3 by TSM, but they make crucial mistakes that cost them this game. Because, then they pick Power of Evil's Azir, which is a solid pick. And again, more disengage. Great disengage. Cloud9 picked the surprising pick of Sivir, and they go with the Alistar, which Vulcan was very good on. I doubt he gets that pick this weekend against 100 Thieves. And then TSM surprisingly go with Bard, which I like that pick because his ultimate, if they're in the realm of doom there, where everybody's jumping into the circle, that his ultimate's going to really keep them in place. So they gave up the Camille, but they actually had some strong answers to it, and I was okay with this draft. But then things just went downhill really fast. They actually start off the game doing pretty well, but they're behind in CS again, which I don't understand with this team right now. They are constantly behind in CS and putting themselves in a bad position during the game. So, it's a back and forth game, and then TSM gets wiped. And, at this point, it's because they've given up Drake control. They've given up some towers. They're dying at the towers. And even though they kept it pretty close for a while, till about 25 minutes, this game just didn't feel winnable because they weren't acting on the opportunities that they had. They didn't go forward. Spica lost to a Kindred as Graves. I don't think we see him on Graves. He apparently doesn't like Graves. I watched the Double If interview. He is not a fan of Graves. I doubt we see him on Graves anymore because he has just not looked comfortable on it. I know it's a good pick, but screw it. Find something else because he somehow got out-farmed by a Kindred. All right, and then Power of Evil expectedly isn't going to do great into Galio, but he just had no impact again in this game. Lost and Sword Art looked lost. And Huni was okay, but, into a Camille, there's not a whole lot he can do. So, he was there to set up fights, to do team fighting and everything. And now I'm sounding like a Huni apologist. I'm really not. But, he looked fine. And so, this is not doom and gloom. This is just being critical of the things that I saw. And, we have got to understand that this team has some really good strengths, and they will end up playing towards them. One of the things I will say is they stole 2 Barons. This team is an objective stealing machine. They should fight every freaking objective no matter how far behind they are because Spica is going to put this team in a position to steal. Whether it's him or he's going to tell his teammates, they are very good at stealing objectives, and that can be absolutely crucial when playing League of Legends. So I do want to say, I don't know that I've ever seen a team be as good at stealing and securing objectives when they're fighting around it as a team as TSM. A lot of it, again, has to do with Speak Up, but, this team they don't have that coordination yet. As this season goes on, if I'm TSM, seriously, I would actually build my team around the fact that Spica is probably going to be able to outsmite anybody, at least in the LCS, when it comes to objectives. And so I would seriously consider building my team around that. If they're not going to be able to do anything else, especially early on in this season, then just be like, you know what, guys, here's the deal. We are picking objective control. Sure, we might give up a tower or 2. Sure, we might give up a kill or 2. Yeah, we're probably even going to be down to CS. But guess what? If we have 3 Drakes by 18 minutes, it's not going to matter. Or I guess it'd be 20 minutes. Yeah, I think it's 20. Either way, my point is if they have 3 Drakes by the mid-game, it's not going to matter. Because they could force team fights. They could come back. They could take towers, right? Oh, well, we're going to give up this Drake because we're going to get 2 towers in the top lane, right? Or, we're going to, smite fight them at this certain area, at this certain time. Bjerg, I don't know if you're listening. Anybody in TSM, I don't know if you're listening to this. But seriously, build around just being able to secure and take objectives like Drake, Rift Herald, and Baron. I think that could be a sound strategy for this team, honestly. So I'm not going to say that I know how to do that necessarily, but it's just a thought. Anywho, when I look at the tournament as a whole, no one really stepped up and carried. I mean, Spica was close, but as I say in my piece that I wrote, if you didn't see it, my 4 takeaways from TSM, the carries just have to do more. PoE, he had really high kill participation, which is great. That means he was roaming, he was doing what he needed to. But for somebody who's expected to be ahead in lane because he's a lane dominant player, or at least a CSing master, he was just behind and he didn't get many kills. He did not do a lot of damage. And PoE has to be better if this team wants to be better. Period. He just has to be. Lost is the only one who gets a little bit of an excuse. Sure, he has played in the LCS before, blah, 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 blah. No, he doesn't have a lot of experience yet. And they stuck him on Jhin duty pretty much all weekend. I mean, in all 3 games against Cloud9, Jhin. Against Golden Guardians, Jhin. Against CLG, Jhin. Against Team Liquid, Kai'Sa, finally. Didn't look good on it. Against 100 Thieves, Xayah. Yeah, which was a weird pick. Still weird. So he was almost on Jhin duty all weekend. Or all tournament long. Didn't do enough damage. Didn't even do, 20%, which is, meaning that they're at least doing their part. He finished 4th on the team. And while Jin's not going to be doing a lot of damage early, they never got to a point where it felt like he was able to just step up and one-shot people, with his 4th shot. And, his ults were not bad, but, I'm giving him a pass. He just doesn't have as much stage time as the rest of his teammates. He is still technically the rookie, even though, he started playing in the LCS before Spica, but, he's still learning how to play with Sword Art. Sword Art, by the way, seems like he is very much the shot caller, the leader of this team, and I'm fine with that, but he has to play better. He just has to be a little bit more, cognizant of his own gameplay and allow his teammates to do their thing. This is just coming from very small bits of TSM Legends. He seemed to be making a lot of the calls. The team seemed to be following them. This is good. I would like for that to be the case because he does have a lot of experience in that regard, and he is known for being a great shot caller. But anyways, then we look at Spica, and, Spica was fine. He's the only person on TSM to finish the tournament with more kills and deaths, which is also really bad for this team. But, he is special. And I think that this team needs to build around him. That's where you build around the objective control. That's where you build around getting him ahead, giving him picks to succeed on. And again, I'm fine with them picking Nidalee, but the rest of the team has to be built around the ability to help him. And sometimes it didn't feel like they were doing that. So you got that. Huni actually had the most damage for the team. Huni actually, after the first 2 games, was probably one of the best players on this team. His gameplay game was awful. But when he was on Gragas, when he was on Ornn, he was really good. And I implore TSM, give the man champions to where he can have an impact and be in the middle of team fights and not be dying instantly. Just give him Ornn. Give him Camille, I guess. He can still have that kind of an impact. Give him Gragas. Give him whatever else ends up being good in the top lane come these new patches. And allow him to just be I don't know, neutral in the early game, and then when it's time for mid game and late game, and he could get out of lane either because his tower got destroyed, or because he destroyed the opponent's tower, or he's just sacrificing his own tower to go down and make plays. Give him the opportunity to make plays, and he will make this team better. I am convinced of that now. I've watched enough of his games in the past. I've watched enough of his games, with TSM so far. I've watched every one of them. And when he has the ability to make plays for this team gets better. So I hope that they will do that. Again, I think we do need to, while I was critical of PoE, I will say this. He held Perks to basically being supremely insignificant the whole game. But it also meant that he was insignificant most of the entire series. So I want to see him find that comfort level, just be who he is and allow his team to do their thing. And I think that they will work. He just looked uncomfortable all weekend. He didn't look like he knew where to be. His positioning was weird. His laning was weird. And it was almost like, especially during the C9 series, like it was almost like he was like afraid of Perks getting, he just like, it was like he had somebody whispering in his ear, just don't let Perks get fed. Just don't let Perks get fed. And he didn't. He did a great job at that. But I want to see him just take that next step and take it to Perks. Perks looked extraordinarily uncomfortable. He looked awful. In that entire series, he was just not much of a factor. So I give PoE a little credit for that, but I want him to be a little less focused on it, put a little bit more into just dominating him if he can, right? Just poop on him. Bot lane isn't bad. Their stats are going to tell you differently. They're not bad. They're just not. The chemistry is just not there yet. They're not on the same page. They're not even close to being on the same page. I would argue they're not even on the same paragraph currently. But they're going to get there. That will get better. I'm happy about that. Spica also just needs to be less afraid and go for it. I know he's playing Nidalee, and I know he's jumping in when he can, but it just felt like there wasn't enough playmaking until it was already too late for him. And I want to see him do more. I want to see him do more because I know he can. This is not criticizing his play. I think he, again, was also playing a little passive. I think he was trying to, feel things out, and that's fine. But this kid is special. I'm telling you right now. This boy is really good. And TSM need to allow him to be as good as he is going to be. Really let him reach his potential. Then lastly, the early game was still rough this entire series. Outside of game 1, they were actually moving like a cohesive unit. It felt like the comms were, where they needed to be. Again, PoE had his only real lead and only dominating performance when he was playing Lucian, which is not something he pretty much ever plays. I think that was game 3 of Lucian for him. I would love to see him on more picks like that, especially if they counter TF or whatever it is, but specifically TF. And they got to work on their early game. Their mid and late games weren't bad. They just never had a chance to get to some of them. So that was a long 30-minute segment on the C9 series and kind of the TL series. There was a lot to unpack there. Now, we head into a weekend where TSM isn't playing. We get to watch the other teams and we get to see who gets to come out on top of the lock-in preseason tournament. If I'm a betting man, I think it's going to be 100 Thieves versus TL. And I think TL ends up winning it. But we'll see. Don't hold me to that. Or maybe do. If it ends up happening, then hold me to it. Anyways, we're going to head into topic 2. I guess this show's just never going to be 30 minutes anymore. I don't know. I can't. There's just so much to go over. There's going to be 3 games every weekend. There's just going to be a lot to unpack with them. Hopefully I'm not repeating myself too much, but there are some points that need to be repeated that are worth repeating. But either way. Into topic 2, which will be a little bit of a shorter one because we've talked about it a little bit. But what did TSM have to work on this week before next weekend when they actually have the beginning of their season? Although it is interesting to note We still don't have the regular season schedule yet. Don't really know how to feel about that one. Was kind of hoping that we would have that. We don't. Whatever, I guess. The first thing is TSM should just be running through draft after draft after draft after draft after draft after draft after draft. And more drafting. This is for the coaching side. Listen, I get that there was probably a lot of nerves with this. I understand that it's like basically a whole new coaching staff. Not basically, it is a whole new coaching staff. And I understand that they're not ever really going to be perfect because drafts are rarely perfect. But they have to be better at mid-draft adjustments, I think. You know, at first it was that they didn't feel like they had a plan. Then during the C9 series, it felt like they had a plan. But it didn't feel like they were able to kind of move away from it. It was like, you know, I mean, seriously, I think every single game it was Pantheon, Talia, Olaf into a first pick Jhin and an Italy. Or Graves. Right? So it was, you know, ban those 3 champions, 80 carry pick, then jungle pick. If it ain't working, then what you doing with it? I don't the wording can't come out of my mouth. I don't know what to say. I just don't understand it. It was frustrating. It was like, guys, we're doing the same dang thing every single time. It's not hard to figure it out as an opponent. C9 still struggled a little bit to figure it out, to be honest. Their drafts were not a whole lot better. If they were better, but like it was more so their bans were very confusing, mostly. Again, Renekton ban? Why? TSM's not going to ban Renekton. You saw it in the first game. You saw it in the second game, and I know they got the Camille, but whew. You know, I guess they were just really afraid of it because they knew TSM was going to try to pick Nidalee. That's the only thing I can chalk that up to, is they just were like, you know what? We don't want to deal with the Camille stun or the Renekton stun into the Nidalee. But TSM didn't, even when those things were open, they didn't play them beforehand. So instead of banning, a quick suggestion for C9, instead of banning Renekton and Camille, why don't you just ban Nidalee? Then you don't have to worry about it. I don't know. It costs you one less ban. I guess maybe their thought was, well, we're going to ban Renekton anyways because he's really strong, but I don't know. For TSM, they should just be running through, you know, just scenario after scenario after scenario of drafting. And I think that they will get better if they just practice that. I mean, I'm serious. I think if their drafting is better, and it's not the only reason that they struggled, but I do think for this team to succeed, the chemistry has to be there, and they have to win more often than not in draft, because after what I have seen so far, they don't match up skill-wise yet. Especially yet. I don't know if they will. And I know that's really hard to hear, but I just don't know that they will. I don't know that Huni is going to be anything more than a playmaking tank, and that's fine. Impact has made a freaking living off of it and has been very good at it, but he has to accept that role. And TSM has to accept that that's probably what he's going to be for them, and that's fine. PoE, I don't know. I mean, he was better than Perks. Jensen so far has been the best mid laner in the LCS. Wow, who would have guessed? You could actually potentially even argue for Damonte. But PoE was definitely not. He was probably the 4th best, maybe. I don't even know if that. He did not look good. He'll be better. We have the one thing we do have with him. It's like there's an old adage of baseball. Where if somebody's struggling or somebody's doing really well, they'll say, well, just look at the back of his baseball card. And what that means is, you know, in the back of baseball cards, they would have their stats from all their years prior that they have played. And so for PoE, I would say, look at the back of his league card, his LOL card. Just look at his stats. We know what he is going to be. Sure, he is struggling right now, but he will be better. I can pretty much guarantee it. He is not falling off. He's not getting worse. He just looked uncomfortable. That will change. He will be better for that. I promise. He will be. Spica will be better too. I think that he has a chance to be right behind Santorin. I fully believe that. I don't think Closer was better than him. I really don't think Blabber was better than him. I think Blabber just played better into the comps. But, you know, and Santorin's going to need time still with his team, but he looked strong so far. But the point is I think Spica has the potential to be better than them because, you know what? I think mechanically he'll probably be as good as them, and I think everything else he'll be right around the same as good as them. You know, maybe not as much in you know, the macro as Santorin, or maybe not as much mechanically as Blabber. He's still going to be pretty close. But I think he evens out in between those two. I think he's like kind of like that nice middle ground. But then the thing he has, he is just way better than them at stealing stuff. He's just way better than them at smiting. He's way better at setting up his team there. And that's where I think he could take his advantage and really be one of the best. And then, you know, again, we look at the bot lane. They're not going to be very good comparatively to some of the other bot lanes in the LCS. Just got to straight up say it. They will probably be the fourth best bot lane. That doesn't mean that Sword Art isn't going to end up being the second or third best. Maybe even the top, I guess, if things get better support. But Lost is probably going to be what Lost is. And, I mean, they put him on a champion to where he couldn't totally just fumble everything. They didn't take many risks with him. And, you know, that's not to say that he is not good. Because he is good. And he already looks like he's probably a top 5 AD carry. And that's with only playing a couple games. His skill shots were outstanding. Seriously, that kid hit almost every single snare that was available to him. But you could tell he wasn't comfortable yet with the team. And I guess that's the whole team right now. But I guess getting back to this long-winded part of it, which is, I guess, part of being a talk show person. The chemistry and the drafting has to be there because when they match up individually, they may not be better. But that's okay because we expect Bjergsen and the coaching staff to be better than the other coaching staffs. We expect them to have strong team chemistry and to allow their flow of the game to work towards them. Because even when you look at it with C9, they weren't always really in a flow. They just hit go, 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 go. And TL still kind of looked similarly. I mean, TL's the team that scares me the most in terms of teams I don't want to face. They look very strong. That bot lane is deadly. And I know Sven and Vulcan were really strong this weekend, but we all know that Sven can fall off. People will start banning Kaisa against him, and I know he still played Sivir well, but TSM just didn't play well as a whole. But holy moly, man. That bot lane for TL is frightening. Tactical and Core JJ scare me to death. And I think they do TSM too. And I don't know where you're going to find your weakness. I guess Jensen's technically the weakness on that team, which is saying a lot. But wow. I mean, that TL team is strong. And that's got to be the bar that we have to set for TSM. They have to be able to find a way to be able to be better than TL. And if they can do that, they have a chance. They have a chance. So going forward, again, drafting needs to be there. The chemistry needs to be there. They need to be on the same page. If they're on the same page, I believe they can beat anybody on any given day. I don't think it's going to be necessarily because they're better than them skill-wise, but I do think that they have pieces that will work well together, and I think that that was the point when they built this team. I think that's why they picked somebody like Huni. You know, none of the other players really on this team, except for maybe Sword Art, are all that aggressive. We saw that the last 2 weekends. Huni was the one making the plays. That is what he is there for. And while I love Hanser, that ain't him, fam. That ain't him. Sorry, I hate to use ain't, but sometimes it kind of works. Lastly, we're going to look into the last topic here. We're going to look at spring. The spring's going to be interesting because it's a 6-week sprint of 3 games a week. So you're still going to get the same amount of games as you got in last spring splits. Or I guess it's spring seasons now because they're not really splitting it. And there are a lot of question marks heading into spring. I'm going to name 4 teams that I think are currently better than TSM, and they're all moving on to the next round. Evil Geniuses, 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, and C9. What TSM have to do is start climbing up the ladder and moving their way up into the upper echelons of the LCS, but they have to take it step by step by step. Because they're not going to be able to leapfrog everybody and go straight to being the best team in the LCS. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's just not. So, you know, here's what they do. They got to start by being better than Evil Geniuses. I think everybody will agree, more than likely, Evil Geniuses are the worst of the 4 teams left. I think Team Liquid sweeps them 3-0 this weekend. I think on Saturday, that game's going to be very quickly finished. And then, truthfully, we're going to find out this weekend, but I think C9 might be 3rd. I think they might be 3rd. I'm going to put out my power rankings later this weekend, so you guys are going to, probably this week, I should say, you guys are going to get to see the full brunt of where I think people are right now, and yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see how much everybody craps on me for that one, but yeah. Anyways, going forward, we'll have to see 100 Thieves, C9. They're battling for 2nd and 3rd. I think TL, again, is the best team right now. So TSM's going to have to try to, you know, be better than them in that order. I think Evil Geniuses, you know, sorry if you're an Evil Genius fan, or, you know, you can disagree with me all you want, but in terms of just the team as a whole, I think TSM will be better than Evil Geniuses. It's after that I don't know. And we will have to see, you know, when they go into spring, when they start next weekend in February, they are going to have to really internalize what happened in this tournament, and they're going to have to find a way to be better than what they were. Otherwise, we are looking at another team that's going to barely make the playoffs, and that will absolutely make changes over the break if they don't do at least 9 or if they don't get at least 3rd. Which I disagree with, but this is how it works in League of Legends. You get 6 months, man. Kind of less than that. You get like 5 months. And if you don't figure it out within 5 months, then you're done. And they will move on from you. And if I'm being honest, I don't know where they move on to or who they move on from at this point, because unless they could pull off a miracle trade at AD carry, or they can, I don't know, refund the money that they spent. I don't know what you do, but I'm being too doom and gloom. I did say that I believe that this team can be a top-tier team, and I do believe that. That was not just for show. I do believe that looking forward to the spring, they have the opportunity. You got to remember, their group was hard compared to the other group. You know, I mean, they had two really strong teams, and CLG may be really bad. That's fine. I think they'll be better later on, and sure, you know, Golden Guardians didn't look great, but they're stronger than we thought they were going to be. But they'll be able to beat up on, you know, the Dignitases, the Immortals, the CLGs. And they'll be able to use that confidence to build this team and make them better. And then by the time playoffs hits, They will have hopefully figured out how to draft better, because when they won the draft, they dominated. In that game 1. I mean, it wasn't close, guys. It wasn't close. That was if we're looking at one performance, game 1 against Cloud9, that's my reason as to why TSM can beat anybody on any given day. Because everything flowed. And that's something that we have to just hold on to. And if they can push forward, and if they can have that kind of game more consistently, then I think we are going to be pleasantly surprised come the end of spring. All right, so the question of the week for you all, answered down in the comment section below or in the comments on Reddit. Do you believe that TSM will finish top 3, and why? Why do you believe that? I don't just want to hear, some BS opinion of, yeah, they will, or no, they won't. Give me a reason, and the rest of the fans, a reason why. It's important to back up your claim. If you're just say I have a gut feeling, then no, we don't want that. Not in here. Gotta put something behind your name, Even if you make that fake Reddit account to really just crap on this team. Because people will do that sometimes. Then at least you're backing it up with some sort of thought process behind it. All right, if you like the show, please take a second to like, subscribe, and comment if you're watching on our YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss another episode. It's a good idea. I also want to make sure that this is the #1 TSM podcast on all podcasting platforms. If you feel so inclined, please leave a review on any of them. I just saw that Amazon has them. If you leave a review there, I will be eternally grateful. Thank you for those of you, I think there's 6 of you, who have left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the comments as well, for the ones who actually left, comments with their reviews. I appreciate that. Please share this with your friends. I want to hear all the opinions. I want people to crap on me, to be mad at me. Like, oh, this guy is delusional, or he's an idiot. I want to hear it. Tell me. You can find the official tweet if you're on Twitter, either on my account at TGHRobertHaynes. Go give me a follow. I'm really close to 1,000. I would really appreciate that. And you can also find it on the Gamehouse's Twitter account at TGH Esports. Please use the hashtag TalkingTSM when tweeting at us or sharing. And lastly, head to thegamehouse.com and head to the TSM page under the Esports and League of Legends tabs to see all of our TSM content. It is almost exclusively written by me. So if you want to continue to support me, which you all are already doing at an extraordinary rate, and I'm just so appreciative for it, yeah, go give those pieces a read. I'm doing my best here. I would love to get more thoughts, and if you have thoughts on other things that you'd like to hear from me about, then let me know. With that, nearly an hour-long show again. I guess this is the new norm, fam. Thanks for tuning in. The show comes out every Thursday and is exclusively for your TSM earholes. I'm Robert Haynes, and this has been Talking TSM. See you next week.